Hello, pardon me for looking a bit what? Alright, demands to be petted. Pardon me for looking a bit dishevelled. Um, it's been a strange day. Uh, Twisted my ankle, apparently whilst sleeping. I don't know how you can do that because you're not on your feet. And maybe I was running amok in my dreams, you know. I don't know. But at any rate, uh, as a result, I probably shan't be attending tonight's Halloween Horror Nights, which is depressing because I really wanted to go tonight. This is Sunday, by the way, the 26th of October, when I'm making this video. God knows when you'll be seeing it or when it actually gets posted, but that's the day it was being made. So, indeed, but I hope to attend as many as possible of the remaining nights later this week, especially as it is now revealed that some new true and legendary things will indeed be occurring sometime in the last few nights of the event, apparently involving some sort of application on one's cellular mobile device, Android or iPhone. What fun! I wonder what the poor people who don't have the smartphones are going to do. Ouija board! No, of course. So, here we are. This will be my, what is it, number 4th, I think, I believe, in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 19, ripped from the silver screen back in the year 2009. I have to keep petting the stone cat, or she'll do that thing at me again, which she did before. But let's see, will she? Let's see what happens. If I don't pet her, will she do that? And now she's resisting because she heard me say that. You're contrary, puss. There she goes, see? She does it. She insists. You must pet the cat at all times. Scratch her tail. Yes. Alrighty then. So let's continue. I was talking about Frankenstein. Creation of the Damned. The first of the houses at Halloween Horror Nights in 2009. And I believe it was sharing Soundstage 23 with another house. I may have to go double check on that. I believe that was the soundstage that was being used that year. But it might have been slightly different. But, hang on, I have a way of knowing for sure. I've got my handy-dandy tome listing all the locations of every house ever. Yes, I made such a book. Just in case I need to know where a particular house was located in a particular year. I made a list of every year and where the houses were located. I'm that anal. Alright, let's see. Let's see where it is. Here it is. 2009. It was Soundstage 23. Good, I was right. Okay. Soundstage 23. Yes. I also forgot to check something I should have, which was exactly how many nights the event ran in 2009. I believe it was, of course, much less than 28, probably somewhere around 21, 22, but I have to go back and count them and determine precisely how many nights it ran and what nights those were. But I forgot to check that before I made the videos, unfortunately. But for now, we won't worry about that. I'll mention that in a later video. Again, now there's your head. Cat, 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 cat. Silly cat. Silly cat. Silly cat. Silly cat. So, Frankenstein. Now, by the way, I've tried to make this video 2 or 3 times earlier. Every damn time I get interrupted. We'll see if I can complete it this time without getting interrupted. It's amazing how that keeps happening to me. So, as I was saying, Frankenstein, yes, creation of the damned. The house itself was given a sort of steampunk design. Uh, Rather interesting. When you first entered the house, the facade was rather unique. It was if you might recall, in one of the Frankenstein series from Universal, and you really must go watch these films at some point in your life if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, what's wrong with you? Anyway, but in one of the films, I think it was Frankenstein versus the Wolfman, or perhaps it was before that, or was it Meets the Wolfman actually, or before that, in one of the earlier films, Son of Frankenstein, the castle exploded. In Bride, of course, he blows up, it's sort of like an old mill, but the castle itself explodes at one point. And the idea here is that Victor Frankenstein has gone back, or Henry, if you use the universal name for him, goes back to Castle Frankenstein and hews it back together. And you have this almost stitching it together like one of his monsters. So it's got these big, huge stone slabs and rough hewn together with stitchwork made out of iron bands and such. And the idea was that it was just like one of his monstrous creations. He has stitched his own castle back together. Then inside there are numerous creations of Frankenstein, not just the big guy himself, but all of a whole bunch of other twisted little obscenities that he had created before this as experiments leading up to the big guy. And of course the bride herself is in the house as well, along with some interesting shout-outs to earlier houses like the large teleport pods from The Fly, the Cronenberg version of The Fly with where the Brundlefly pods, and Jeff Goldblum, with Jeff Goldblum as the actor, yes, playing the scientist in that film, which were featured in one of the Museum of Horror houses back in the 90s, and they pulled those out, and for many years were also located in the horror makeup show, and they put those into that house. Right, so getting back to it, there was a really nifty scene, one of the best scenes in this house, as you go twisting through the laboratories and areas of the doctor's castle, seeing all sorts of hideous experiments and lots of bits and pieces, like an ape's hand that might twitch a little bit, or there was one, a dummy they use a lot of, a man who's been severed across here in sections, was featured in the Body Collector's house the year before, and in many other houses over the years, and lots of other little bits and pieces that were in Body Collectors and jars were also seen in laboratory scenes in this house. So it had a lot of some familiar props, but the creatures themselves were remarkable. And there's one really dandy scene which I have to mention because it was a show scene that was quite remarkable. As most of you are aware, in most Frankenstein films, the Doctor has a demented assistant named, usually, Igor, often seen as a hunchback. Yes, master. You know, that sort of thing. In the original Frankenstein film from Universal, Dwight Frye played the character who was not called Igor. I don't quite recall exactly if his name was Fritz or Hans, but it was one of those two names, one of the more common German names. And anyway, he was a bit of a hunchback, but he was also kind of a bastard. He's the bastard who dropped the brain in the laboratory, and so he substituted the abnormal brain for the normal brain, thus causing so much trouble with the monster when he became animated. As we all know, Mel Brooks had a hell of a lot of fun with the normal and his Igor or Igor character by Marty Feldman, and Abby Normal. Yes, that was fun. But the parody primarily of Son of Frankenstein, but Fritz himself, or Hans, or whatever the little guy's name was, Dwight Frye's character, also is a sadistic little fuck. He likes to tease and torment the creature with a torch. the torch burned. Monster goes, really nasty little piece of work. Of course, the monster eventually gets the better of him, knocks him down, and sort of hangs a little bugger by his neck, which of course he deserved, but that's the first actual murder the monster commits on purpose. The little girl with the flowers was completely accidental. He didn't mean to do that. Now he sort of learns how to kill people. Oh, that's a really stupid thing for the little bastard to teach the monster, isn't it? Because now he's going to use that in all sorts of ways. But of course the character, of course, becomes a sort of a type or archetype. We have that continuing. Igor himself actually first appeared in Son of Frankenstein, I believe, where one of Frankenstein's offspring is approached by a sinister shepherd named Igor, spelled with a Y originally rather than an I, played by Bela Lugosi himself. He had his neck broken as he had been hung for being a bad person as an execution, but it failed and he came back and was sort of like this. And eventually his brain gets transplanted into the monster in a later film. But that's another story entirely. But that's where the name Igor actually comes from, a character Bela Lugosi played in later films in the Frankenstein series. Again, go watch these films if you haven't. Damn. Anyway, they're the basis of Universal horror to begin with, you know. So, Creation of the Damned. There's a scene that commemorates the enmity between the monster and the Doctor's demented hunchback assistant, usually referred to as Igor. And in this case, Igor is there, and the monster comes up behind him, and his hand goes right through from behind and pops out Igor's chest, grabs his heart, and comes back out through the middle of the body, and he holds it up, and he's holding the heart, with the beating heart of Igor in his hand as Igor falls to the ground dead. Very nifty bit of legerdemain, and make you think you actually see the hand go through and pull out on the other side, when obviously they had various props to facilitate this, but it looks, you know, like it really happens. It's like, holy fuck, he just pulled his heart out. That's what you have in the scene. It was really cool. And then after that, you continue and you meet the bride, and then of course she comes to life, and you have to face her and the creature himself. In the last scene, this enormous laboratory with high ceilings, and up at the very highest is Dr. Henry Frankenstein in his nifty steampunk hat with the brass goggles, but he's all dead because the monster has killed him and hung him up and crucified in his own machinery. And the monster played here primarily by a 6'4" guy, maybe even taller fellow named Brian, at least in one cast, more commonly known amongst the Halloween Horror Nights online community as CD, standing for Creatively Destructive Big Guy. He would chase you out and usually do a pretty good job of it, chasing you out. Now, I don't think I've done the house justice, but it was an awesome house. I loved it tremendously, and in fact, it became my favorite Halloween Horror Nights house ever up until that time. Of course, since then, other houses have replaced it in that particular spot in my heart. But at the time, and for a couple of years at least, it was the #1 house for me for a bit. So it's a very good house, and I enjoyed it tremendously. Now, I think I've finished with that house. We can move on to the second house of the event, which shared Soundstage 23 with Frankenstein Creation of the Damned, and of course that house was none other than Dracula, Legacy of Blood. Let me double check on that. I'm pretty sure it shared the soundstage. Pretty certain of that. We'll double check just to make sure. Yes, it did indeed. That's right. That's right. So Dracula, Legacy of Blood. Now, of course, just as Frankenstein and Dracula are the two of the cornerstones in which the Universal horror franchise really is based, the two major sound releases coming out within a year of each other, Dracula with Bela Lugosi and Frankenstein with Boris Karloff. And of course it just hit the 15-minute mark, so I have to stop this episode.